Spring is here, and the deals are hotter than ever at Shack Shop. Turn heads with stunning bikinis, now on sale. Explore the deep with cutting-edge underwater drones. Gear up for adventure with durable tents for every trip. Ride into spring with unbeatable deals on bikes. Fresh styles, women's fashion, and must-have looks, all discounted. Don't miss the Shack Shop Spring Fling Sale. These prices won't last. Shop now and make this spring unforgettable, only at Shack Shop.
Minnesota lawmaker presses for answers after Omar misses key fraud hearing. A political showdown is unfolding in Minnesota as mounting questions swirl around one of the most widely discussed fraud investigations in recent state history. At the center of the controversy is Representative Ilhan Omar, who is now facing intensified scrutiny after declining to attend a scheduled hearing examining alleged connections to a sprawling pandemic-era fraud scheme. The escalation this week when a Republican state lawmaker publicly criticized Omar for what she described as a complete lack of response, not only skipping the hearing itself, but also failing to acknowledge multiple outreach attempts leading up to the event. The absence has only deepened concerns among critics who argue that transparency is essential given the scale and severity of the fraud case under investigation. Hearing meant to address massive fraud allegations. The hearing in question was organized as part of a broader effort to examine how federal COVID-19 relief funds were distributed and potentially misused during the height of the pandemic. Lawmakers specifically aimed to explore whether policy decisions and oversight failures contributed to what federal authorities describe as one of the largest fraud schemes tied to pandemic relief programs. The case centers around a nonprofit organization accused of orchestrating a massive operation that allegedly diverted funds intended to provide meals for children into personal enrichment schemes. Investigators have alleged that hundreds of millions of dollars were improperly obtained through falsified records, inflated meal counts, and coordinated efforts among multiple individuals and organizations. Given the scale of the alleged fraud, lawmakers say understanding how such a system was allowed to operate is critical, and that includes examining the roles of policymakers who supported or expanded access to these programs. Lawmaker says Omar ghosted committee. The chair of the committee overseeing fraud prevention and government oversight did not mince words when describing Omar's absence. According to the lawmaker, Omar failed to respond to repeated invitations and requests for participation in the hearing. The lack of communication has been described as both disappointing and concerning, particularly in light of the seriousness of the allegations being discussed. She didn't show up, she didn't respond, she essentially ghosted the committee, the lawmaker said in a statement following the hearing. That statement reflects growing frustration among those pushing for greater accountability and transparency in how pandemic relief funds were handled. Formal letter demands documents and answers. Following the missed hearing, the committee chair sent a formal letter directly to Omar's office. The letter outlines a series of requests for documentation and information related to her involvement with federal nutrition programs and any potential connections to individuals or organizations implicated in the fraud case. Among the materials requested, communications related to the expansion of child nutrition programs during COVID-19, emails, text messages, and meeting records involving state agencies, correspondence with constituents or organizations connected to meal distribution efforts, documentation regarding public statements or promotions tied to program participants. The letter also includes a deadline for compliance, signaling that lawmakers intend to pursue answers even in the absence of voluntary cooperation. Questions raised over promotion of local business. One specific point of interest involves Omar's public promotion of a Minneapolis-based restaurant that later became associated with the federal nutrition program under investigation. During a televised appearance in Somali language media, Omar highlighted the restaurant as a location participating in meal distribution efforts. That segment was reported to be shown during the hearing as part of a broader discussion about connections between public officials and organizations linked to the case. Lawmakers are now seeking all communications related to that appearance, including any internal discussions or coordination with the business or other entities involved. Critics argue that such promotions, while potentially well-intentioned, may have contributed to increased funding flows into a system that ultimately lacked sufficient oversight. Expanding scope of inquiry. The committee's inquiry is not limited to general policy decisions. The letter also requests information about any direct or indirect contact between Omar and individuals who have been charged or identified in connection with the fraud scheme. This includes a list of alleged co-conspirators, as well as key figures involved in the nonprofit at the center of the investigation. Additionally, lawmakers are examining whether campaign donations from individuals later charged in the case were accompanied by any communications or interactions that could raise further questions. While no formal accusations have been made linking Omar directly to wrongdoing in the fraud case, the requests offer an effort to map out any potential connections and ensure that all relevant information is brought to light. Political stakes continue to rise. The controversy comes at a time of heightened political tension, with the lawmaker leading the inquiry also pursuing a higher political office. The situation has quickly become a focal point in broader debates over government accountability, pandemic spending, and oversight failures. Critics argue that the scale of the fraud demands aggressive
aggressive investigation, while supporters of Omar contend that the allegations are politically motivated and lack substantive evidence tying her directly to any illegal activity. Regardless of political perspectives, the issue has captured national attention due to the sheer size of the alleged fraud and the involvement of high-profile public figures. Feeding Our Future scandal, a brief overview. The fraud case at the center of the controversy has been described by federal prosecutors as a massive scheme involving the misuse of funds intended to feed children during the pandemic. Key elements of the case include claims of fake meal distribution sites, inflated numbers of meals served, forged documentation submitted for reimbursement, coordinated efforts among multiple participants. Authorities estimate that hundreds of millions of dollars may have been improperly obtained through the program. The case has led to numerous charges against individuals connected to the nonprofit and its network of partners, with ongoing legal proceedings expected to continue for months or even years. Broader questions about oversight. Beyond the specifics of the case, the controversy has sparked wider discussions about how pandemic relief programs were implemented and monitored. Many of these programs were designed to distribute funds quickly in response to urgent public needs, often with reduced oversight requirements to expedite justice. While this approach allowed aid to reach communities faster, critics argue it also created vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Lawmakers are now grappling with how to balance rapid response in emergencies, any funds, or use funds. Additional controversies add pressure. The current situation is not occurring in isolation. Omar is also facing scrutiny on other fronts, including questions related to financial disclosures and separate allegations raised by political opponents. These overlapping issues have intensified media coverage and contributed to a broad narrative of controversy surrounding her tenure. Supporters argue that the increased scrutiny reflects her prominence as a national figure, while critics say it underscores the need for greater transparency and accountability. Deadline set for response. The letter sent by the committee includes a firm deadline for Omar to provide the requested information. Lawmakers have indicated that failure to respond could result in further action, though specific next steps have not been publicly dealt. The situation remains fluid with potential for other developments as investigators, lawmakers, and the public continue to examine the facts. Public reaction and media coverage. The controversy has sparked significant reaction across social media, news outlets, and political circles. Some commentators have questioned why Omar chose not to attend the hearing, suggesting that her presence could have helped clarify key issues. Others argue that the hearing itself may have been politically charged, making participation less productive. Regardless of interpretation, the decision not to appear has become a central talking point in discussions about the case. What happens next? As the deadline for response approaches, attention will remain focused on whether Omar provides the requested documents and answers. Possible next steps could include additional hearings or investigations, subpoenas for records or testimony, expanded inquiries into related issues. The outcome may have implications not only for the individuals involved, but also for how future oversight of government programs is conducted. Conclusion. The controversy surrounding the missed hearing highlights the complex intersection of politics, policy, and accountability in the wake of unprecedented pandemic spending. While no definitive conclusions have been reached regarding Omar's involvement, the situation underscores the importance of transparency and thorough investigation when public funds are at stake. As lawmakers continue their efforts to uncover the full scope of the fraud and any associated connections, the case remains one of the most closely watched political and legal developments in Minnesota.